I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for coming out on an extra night. I appreciate it. But I figured we could go through the budget. You've had an opportunity, hopefully, to look through the document that was distributed last week and formulate any questions you might have or concerns. This is the first draft. It's merely my attempt at taking the conversations that we've had over the past year and understanding the concerns of the board and the priority and trying to put it together in a budget presentation. So anywhere where you feel it's not consistent with your wishes, let me know and we can make revisions. The only caveat to that is we need to, next week at our next meeting, we'll need to take our vote on the special articles, finalize the warrant for, we'll have to take a vote on the warrant, finalize it and get it for posting. Okay. The theme this year is basically rebuilding on a strong foundation. I spent the better part of the last 2 years trying to understand our financial operation and to put some controls in place and some policies and procedures so that we could firm up what we were already, I had already made some great progress towards relative to our financial foundation. The priorities based, again, on our discussions at our meetings, I felt like the board had made a strong commitment to reinstate public safety programming and budgeting during the last 5 to 7 years. They've suffered some pretty significant cuts, and I think we've all seen the impact of that, particularly during this last storm event. We had all of our force out continuously. If it hadn't been for the National Guard and the state police stepping in to help out, we would have had some serious issues. They did a phenomenal job with the resources that they had available to them. So this proposal will try and add back some of what has been lost. I thought it was very important also that we develop a road improvement program. We haven't had a formal program in the past, so that the DPW director on an annual basis would create a 5-year plan looking at what needs to be done. The idea behind it is that we would address our worst roads, those that were most deteriorated, but not at the expense of neglecting our good roads. We want to keep our good roads in decent condition and start working on those that are in the worst case. So I've talked to the DPW director about this. He's put together a preliminary draft. That draft would go to the capital planning committee on an annual basis for their input and assistance and prioritization. And then, we all understand that it would have to be a fluid document because after a winter season, there's always going to be changes. And all the Chapter 90 approvals will come before the Board of Selectmen, and ultimately you would have the final say. I think we want to make everybody aware of the fact that we have this OPEB liability. You're going to hear me talk about it every year at town meeting. The Finance Committee is very much aware of it. We'll be updating the numbers every 3 years. We did fund it last year for the first time. We put a very small amount, but we want to make a commitment every year to put money into that fund, so the people stay aware that it's out there. This budget establishes a stabilization funding program. We've got the capital planning committee in place now. They're issuing their report, but we don't necessarily have a way to fund those requests. This budget is the first year that we'd be putting a substantial amount of money in. Now, that was all contingent upon the changes that we were hoping were going to happen if the governor's budget should be approved with education funding. Now we know that's not likely to happen, so we will put money into the stabilization fund this year, but it won't be to the extent that we had initially hoped. Again, we want to do all these things, all of our goals and priorities. We want to do it while we maintain adequate reserves. We want to keep balances in our stabilization and our free cash funds for rating purposes as well as for emergency situations. Continue addressing our capital facility issues. We have done this at a very fast pace. The issues that were identified when I came here relative to the DPW facility, the town hall, some of the other town-owned buildings, the school buildings, those are now being sold. But we still have the issue of housing of a police department or a public safety facility, so that's still very much an issue. And as always, enhancing the communications with the residents, which I understand we went live today. So Channel 9 is now up and running. That's the first step in moving towards increasing our communications. The budget summary that you have in front of you is a little over a $16 million operating budget. Again, as presented, that was done with the governor's budget in front of me. So as presented, that had an overall decrease in the operating budget, a very small decrease of $144,000. We saw a significant increase in education spending of about 2.9%. That will likely swing the other way, so we're probably looking at closer to a 0.5% or a 1% increase in education funding. Municipal spending increased slightly by design. Wages, there is a 2% increase for all wages. The most significant areas that were changed was the DPW, the implementation of the road improvement program was a little bit over $100,000 increase to that operating budget. That will have to be reviewed. That's one of the areas that, in the event that the education funding should swing the full $390,000, that's one of the areas that that the stabilization funding program, and then we'll have to review some of the public safety reinstatements as well. Public safety has a 12% increase, and human services had the most dramatic decrease of about 42%, and that was directly related to the management changes at the transfer station. So there was a significant reduction in the expenses, but you also have to remember the revenues aren't coming to us anymore. So that's why you see that large drop in that area. We still have the same challenges that we have year after year. They don't change significantly. We have an over-reliance on our property taxes because we don't have much commercial development. State aid increases only slightly year to year, and from what they promise us at this time of year to what we actually get, we don't always realize that full 3%, so the increases are much smaller than that generally. We have reviewed and updated all of our fee schedules in the hopes of making sure that they're competitive and that they reflect the cost to perform the services. We've done that during the last year in particular. Our retirement assessment this year is only increasing by a modest amount. We've seen over the last 2 or 3 years pretty big jumps, but it seems to be evening off at this point. Health insurance is up about 8%. Still one of our biggest budget busters, if you will. But if you recall, we had significant savings last year because of our plan design changes. So we're still not back up to where we had been in the past. Again, I heard you speaking with the chairman of the finance committee earlier, the impact of the two-step method. We had hoped that we were going to realize that almost 3% decrease. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like that's going to happen. more likely that we'll see about a 1% increase in education funding. I think everyone understands it's not that the Triton budget that was presented by the school committee, I think it was thoughtful, it was a modest increase. It was the distribution, the way the state formula distributes it based on minimum contributions that we're seeing being impacted now. That could have, like I said, up to a $390,000 impact. So we've got to be thinking, we knew it going into the budget season that it probably wouldn't be a true reset, and now we're faced with it, unfortunately. So.
Tracy, is there any prognosis as to when the state budget will be finalized? I know the state has a habit in recent years of putting things off as long as they possibly can.
No, and it's very frustrating because, even a couple of weeks, 2 years ago, they did the same thing, and they finalized the budget in June, and it was after everyone's town meetings were set. And if we hadn't been very conservative in our initial budget pass here, and say it had been a slightly more significant increase, we would have likely been looking at another override proposal, but now we're past the deadline for getting it onto the ballot. And it really puts the communities in a very difficult position. You think you're being, conservative and getting ahead of it, but that's a very big component of our operating budget. It's over 50%, so it does have a significant impact on the budget. Addressing unfunded liabilities is going to continue to be an issue for us for many, many years, and for the district as well. But the good news is that most of our contracts are negotiated, completely and are funded. So we're good for another 2 years on that.
On the post-employment benefit issue, certainly part of the problem has been with the pension fund, right? That things were very unrealistic in terms of the estimates that people were using at the time. Is that, at least going forward, is that aspect now, does it seem like
the regional retirement system has addressed that issue, and that's why you saw the big increases in the last 3 years. So I think...
But you think, the fact it's leveling off now is an indicator that they've finally got their act together?
I think so. I think the actuarial analysis that's been done, indicates that it will be more of a smooth transition. Although wages, the wages that you pay if you do significant hirings, it doesn't change much for us, but those will impact your
But again, the problem we have with the folks that have retired now is that they were in the system
before,
when nobody was putting enough money into it.
Right.
And so that's where we're trying to play catch up at this point.
Exactly.
And likewise, sort of similar question with the health insurance, is that we're seeing 8% a year estimate. This is something that we know has been a problem for years, but again, for our retired employees, what's the picture on health insurance looking forward? We're going to continue to really get hit as we try to cover that.
Well, we've made, with the implementation of all the plan design changes, we've really gone as far as we can in that area. So now the only way you can address it, we're in the consortium, we're in the Massachusetts Interlocal Insurance Association agency, so we get the benefit of being in a co-op, if you will. So our rates are actually lower than they would be if we as a group were on our own. But short of reducing the percentage that the community contributes, there really aren't a lot of other options. We've got the highest co-pays. We've addressed all of those issues that are within our control. So the only thing would be to look at, we're 75-25%, to look at changing that distribution. But I don't know if the board is...
Having looked at this stuff, I think we're a little more generous than a lot of the companies out there, but not by much. And I think the big difference is that, with the pension system, essentially we take the risk, right?
Right.
as opposed to a 401K where the employee takes
The employee
risk.
takes the risk,
Yeah,
yep.
that's really
Yep,
the hard thing to deal with.
yep, yep. And I definitely don't want to manage our own pension system.
Absolutely.
It's way outside my area of expertise, but this is just a brief slide to show you what we deal with typically on an annual basis. So we do have a little bit of a structural gap. You know, the growth changes a little bit in property taxes from year to year, so that fluctuates a bit, and the educational assessments, that's not every year. But that's on a normal year, that's what I've seen occurring since I've been here, and I looked back about 5 years. So, you know, we're gonna still have a few years of struggles ahead of us.
But also that time period basically includes the Great Recession. So-
Absolutely,
So
absolutely.
I was wondering, what did new growth look like before, you know, we fell into,
I've got it coming up.
okay.
Basically, I think you're all pretty much aware of this, we only have the 3 sources of revenue. Property taxes being the biggest one for us, local receipts and state aid. This year, this is what we're looking at for growth. 2.5% is a little over 300,000, and the initial projections by the Board of Assessors is about $92,000 in new construction. That's a lot for us. You usually, we're at this point in time, you know, around 50,000. That's what they projected in the past. So there is a lot of building on the horizon. We've got the small subdivisions going on. So that's what they projected at this point in time. So our total increase is a little over 400,000. Receipts don't change significantly from year to year. But they, as you can see, there has been a decline in the local receipts. It would be nice if we could get back up to 2004 revenues. I don't know specifically what the difference was at that point in time, but local receipts are your, you know, motor vehicle excise taxes, your permit fees, your building fees, your fines and forfeits, penalties people pay on interest and taxes, those types of things. So that's basically what we're looking at for this year.
Excise tax is a significant amount of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I remember back several years ago, the excise taxes went way down. No one was buying new cars and that. Do you remember that, Frank? That hit us one year? Yeah.
Yeah, they're up now.
Yeah.
They're up now. I think this year they're projected a little over 900,000. But yeah, they did drop significantly.
Yeah.
It was about 4 years ago. State aid, obviously you can see it's kind of trending up ever so slightly, but it's such a small percentage of our revenue picture that it doesn't really impact us dramatically one way or the other. Available funds, we have seen an increase in. Again, these things don't happen by accident, they're by design. The significant jump in our free cash was primarily due to the efforts in collection of delinquent taxes. That's where we saw a big jump occurring. There was also, we had some miscellaneous non-recurring issues, settlement in the lawsuit, and a few things like that that will all contribute to that, as well as revenues coming in a little bit higher than projected, and some expense budgets having money left over at the end of the year. The Finance Committee has joined me in really making a commitment to people. We ask them when they prepare their annual operating budgets that they do so in, you know, a very realistic manner, and understanding that if at the end of the year that there's money left over in that budget, it doesn't mean their budget's going to get cut the next year. It means they've managed it well, it's a budget, it's all based on estimates, and that's great. So there's, you know, some money that would close out to free cash. I don't really think it's a good practice to penalize people because they've managed it effectively. And I will tell you that none of these operating budgets have any margin of error. They are so close There are no contingencies built into any of them at all. And I think you've seen in the last 2 years, at the end of the year, we've had to make a lot of transfers. Fortunately, we've had money available in other accounts to do so, but they are very, very close.
Tracy, I had a question on the free cash. You said quite a bit of that was due to collecting delinquent property taxes, and we pretty much
We're
let
done.
that cow dry.
Yeah, there, right now, all taxes are either due, currently due. All the back taxes currently have liens filed on them, or they're in the foreclosure process. So everything right now is current where it should be. We've got a little bit more work to do on the boat excise taxes. We're just finishing those up. We did the property taxes first, then we did the motor vehicle, and now we're finishing up on the boat. And that's what I'm talking about when I said we have a pretty solid
Right.
financial
I don't
foundation
imagine
now.
the boat back taxes are anywhere near what we had for
No,
property taxes.
no, there'll be a little bit realized, but
Right.
not.
So we shouldn't expect very much from that category going forward.
No, definitely not, definitely not.
Tracy, excise tax available to the town totally? How does that go?
Yes, it is.
Why-
It comes from the registry of
Why do
motor
they call it a
vehicles.
state excise tax?
Don't know. No, but it's distributed to the communities to
Yeah.
fix their local roads. That's the intended purpose, but it can be used for any legal purpose. This is just a snapshot of our total revenues. Overall, all revenues coming into the town are about 18.5 million. A little bit higher than what we saw last year, about a 3% increase. Again, we made some adjustments to fee schedules and the like, so. The tax levy, up about 1% overall. That includes all our debt exclusion overrides. So that's why you don't see 2.5%, which is what you naturally expect. Local receipts are down a little bit. Primarily, that's related to that's the flip side of the transfer station. That's the revenue side of the transfer station there. State aid, slight increases, anywhere up to 3%. Available funds is where we're spending a lot more. We're going to be projecting spending a lot more because we have a lot more available to us. So that's been increasing the amount of free cash we have, the amount of stabilization. That also includes labor sale funds that Chuck had worked on. So that's all of the available funds that the town has.
And Tracy, I mean, I know we're not where you'd like to be with the stabilization fund, but what would the target be for a
There's different schools of thought. The DOR says minimum of 5%. Mass Government Finance Association likes you more around 15%. So, we're at 5, but with this storm that we had out on the island, it made me kind of take a good hard look at the numbers and what we would have available and what we might have to do and the expenses and how they would come in and other emergencies and if we have to buy different pieces of apparatus or whatever. We really don't have a significant amount of reserves. We could get through maybe one emergency, and then we'd be right back down to where we started. Now, do you have to have 15%? No. But I think what you want to see is an amount of free cash available. You spend some of it, but then it gets replenished in the next year. So you want to see it staying level. I'm more concerned with seeing this. This is what's happened in Newbury. We had free cash, we had negative free cash. We had free cash, you want to keep it so it's level. That's what rating agencies want to see, and that's when you know that we're spending some of it because we've got to address these issues, but we've also got enough tucked away in a reserve to handle an emergency situation. Something that's catastrophic, I mean, you'd hope that the state would come in at some point and assist with reimbursements, but we,
But I mean, free cash and the stabilization fund are a little bit different, right? We have to go to town meeting to spend money from the stabilization fund.
From both. You need,
Yeah.
you need town meeting approval to spend from both, but the difference is stabilization needs the 2/3 majority vote. And what we've tried to do in conjunction with the capital planning committee is set the stabilization fund up so that will fund our capital asset replacements, so that it's not by law that it has to, it can be spent on any legal municipal purpose. But the plan is to have enough money in the stabilization fund to fund our capital planning committee's annual asset replacement schedule. So that's the idea. That's
And then
kind
free
of
cash
the-
takes care of things like snow removal or that type of.
Snow and ice deficits, those types of things that are more extraordinary and unforeseen. Yeah, that's the plan, anyway. So that just kind of breaks it out in the percentages. You can see, we're usually a little bit higher. We're usually closer to 80%, but this is the way it shakes out this year. On the expenditure side, the regular operating expenditures are 16.8 million, down a little bit. Likely to see that change because of the education formula. Municipal spending is up 5.7%. That's with adding everything back to public safety and the road improvement program. Debt service is declining. Benefits insurance are up 2.3%. And then we have our off-budget items. Those are the state and county assessments that go against our cherry sheet revenues. The special articles that I think I give you a draft warrant there for your review. Any deficits that have to be raised, overlay, and the likes.
Now, when you think about an emergency like Plum Island eating through a lot of funds, I mean, it's significant that our salaried personnel put in such long hours, and really carried a lot of the bulk of some of the work down there that might have had to go.
Oh yeah, you have the police and firemen out there around the clock for 5-7 days.
Yeah.
And then they started, taking breaks.
Yeah.
That just breaks out where the majority of the expenditures are. This is just the spending by function of government. Which is right where you would expect it to be. Although public safety is a little bit low, that's usually higher than your debt service spending and the likes. But I always think, when you're evaluating a current budget, it's good to look at where you've been. It kind of shows what's happened here. I think clearly Newbury has made a commitment to education spending. We've increased our spending on education significantly over the last 10 years. Our debt service has always been relatively high. It is coming down a little bit. Benefits, it's not surprising. You've seen it eat up 2% more of our operating budget over the last 10 years, which is consistent with everything we read about. The municipal budget obviously took the biggest hit during that period. So it just kind of gives you a snapshot.
On the debt that we're paying down, is that debt exclusion or debt override?
It's debt exclusion
exclusion.
override,
So
it's
that-
called, yep.
So
And
once that goes away, that's a relief to the taxpayers?
that's a very good point.
Yeah.
It is a relief to the taxpayer, but the thing that you have to keep in mind is if you have to issue debt in the future, we don't have any levy capacity in our operating budget to do so. So anything you want to do has to be contingent upon a debt exclusion override proposal.
Yeah.
Usually you have some levy capacity that's committed to paying your debt service.
Tracy, what's considered, sort of good management practice for the debt service for a town like ours?
Under 10%.
So we're not, we're.
Well, no, we're getting better.
Yeah, I mean, I know there's been concern in the past that our debt service is pretty high, but
Yep. Yeah, no, all the indicators for Newbury, we're moving in the right direction.
I know we're moving in the right direction, I just want to know how close are we to our goals?
Well, you know, we used to look at, one thing is, because the biggest amount of money goes to education, is where our partners were for debt service. Okay, where Raleigh and Salisbury were.
Oh,
And
okay.
we used to use that as a, you know, where do we stand compared to them? And we used to be twice as much as Raleigh and
That
Salisbury.
doesn't surprise me, yeah. Yeah, I'll honestly, you know, when I started and got a look at where we were, my sense was it would take 5 to 7 years to get us to a much better financial position. And really, I'm very pleased because in 2 years, we've made much more progress than I ever imagined. So I think as far as hitting goals, we're still probably another year or two away, but we're getting there faster than I had hoped, so. Just a quick run through of the municipal department budgets. You do have in your document all of the line items that show specifically the increases, but there is a 2% increase for salary and wages, big reduction in the tax title and foreclosure account. Now that we've collected so much, we don't need to spend so much, because we had to engage attorneys and collection agencies to help us with those efforts. The one big change is the funding for the assessor's position, the principal assessor's position. You'll see on the line item there's an increase of a little over $44,000. That has gotten the approval of the Board of Assessors, and the Personnel Board has reviewed it. We have advertised and are conducting, hopefully we'll be conducting interviews beginning at the end of the month. The tree warden has a big increase in there as well, of $10,000. There have been consistent concerns about the fact that that budget has been underfunded for many years. This will bring it to its annual funding goal, so you won't see any more increases from that point forward. I just have an estimate right now for the increase in the insurance. It's about $6,900 at this point in time, but that could fluctuate slightly, but we're still under what we were spending 2 years ago. This document increases staffing from 9 back to 11 full-time officers, and that's the level that we had in place back in 2004. $169,000, and that would, like I said, that would add back the 2 positions. If we have to make some, well, assuming we have to make those additional cuts, we'll probably be looking at adding back just the 1. The cruiser replacement program still continues in this budget. Fire departments, all the salary and wage line items will be increasing by 2%. And the training line item that I added last year will be doubled in this proposal.
So, Tracy, on the fire, where does that put us with respect to where we were before we started cutting everything to the bone?
We're not back to
That's
100%. You know, I'll have to look at where we were, because the budget when I first came had already been done, and I'm not sure, I don't know, Frank, do you remember if there were any adjustments to fire wages at that point in time, the 2011 budget?
I don't think so. One of the big cuts was flat rate,
Which was last year,
Right.
but we added, I think if you recall at the last town meeting, we added some money back to that, but it wasn't 100%. We're still not at 100% with any of the add backs.
Well, at one point it was, 90 to 100,000. Now it's down to like 60 for next year. But we're also buying some equipment for them too, so that may compensate a little bit for the loss of the flat rate.
Yeah, in the special articles, you'll see that there's a proposal to purchase some turnout gear for the fire department. Our Whittier population has doubled. We now have 14 students there, so we have a pretty significant increase in that piece of our educational assessment.
I wanted to ask you about that, too.
Yep.
Any idea why? Is this going to continue to increase? Or?
I mean, there's no way of knowing how many students will be attending. They're, I understand, a pretty competitive program to get admission, but it's, I mean, I don't know how you
Now, like for
ever.
Newbury, we haven't sent very many students there, so.
I think we're 14 now,
Yeah.
but I know it doubled, so. Yeah, I
just
don't
think
know
it's
how.
really, again, looking forward, I mean, I think that the trade enrollments look like they're going to be pretty constant.
They
so
do.
I was just wondering, whether our student population in Whittier is going to be more or less constant, or whether we're just seeing little fluctuations, or whether there's some trend here.
It's harder to gauge that. I don't know exactly. It's available slots,
Yeah.
competitive, how
But also in
competitive
economies
it's
that people are more interested in more
in
vocational
the
style of
trades.
education.
Yep,
so-
sure.
I actually think, David, that as Whittier has become, just, almost a sought-after school, that,
Okay.
people have changed how they view it, and even a town that's supposedly upward mobile, like Newbury, probably recognizes a good school system when they see it. I think
Well,
that's-
Also, like to further that, there's the vast majority of the people that go to college after Whittier, they
Yeah.
graduate from Whittier. Very high percentage.
I think Whittier, it's well-rounded. You actually get an education and learn stuff. It's kind of neat.
Yeah, they do a
Same
nice
thing,
job.
right?
Well, I mean, depending on what you take, you actually, learn a skill.
Yeah, they do a nice job. DPW, you see an increase in the road materials and equipment, as well as the road improvement program. The program, as we talked about a little bit earlier, but the increase in the maintenance, I'd like to see a crack sealing program re-implemented, those types of things, because we're, some of the cuts that we made weren't necessarily the best area. I mean, we didn't have any choice. We had to eliminate the programs because we simply didn't have enough money to fund it. But I think if you're going to put in a relatively robust improvement program, you need to also do your maintenance. So that's what you're seeing there. Snow and ice, what we've done is we've taken a 5-year average and we're trying to hit 75% of the 5-year rolling average. That would be $155,000, so you'll see an increase of $35,000 in the proposal. That also can be scaled back if we need to. One of the areas we could adjust. Board of Health, most significant decrease in both the salary and wage account and the expenses from the transfer station management program change. Council on Aging, there were some slight reductions. I know that's always a concern when we see that, but it was at their request. They've gotten some grant funding for some of their positions, so they can pay for it through that and don't need the money in the operating budget this year. The veterans, I think you've probably seen it in the paper, I don't know. We haven't had a lot of conversations about it because it's still very early in the planning stages. Our veterans agent is Kevin Hunt. I don't know if you're aware of that, but he works for the city of Newburyport. He works for the town of Newbury. As a courtesy, he does ours. We don't have a significant amount, although the demand has been increasing. What's happening now is Newburyport, Salisbury, Amesbury, Merrimack, and Newbury are considering forming a veterans district. We're not likely to be able to maintain Kevin. He's going to work for them. So we'd be facing hiring a veterans agent and would likely pay significantly more than what you see there to get someone on board to do it even on a part-time basis. This seems to be the best deal for the town and getting the best services, but it's very early in the process, and these are just the initial numbers. Ginny Creamer is doing some research. There'll probably have to be a town meeting article, but that's kind of the conservative worst-case scenario that we'd be facing in that line item.
It would be kind of nice to see you know, what that district provides for service.
Oh, yeah, that's what's all being, that meetings are ongoing and they're working on that right now. They'll have a document before any decisions will be made.
I just want to say, I mean, it seems like a logical thing to do, and we're getting so many people coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan, we know they're just looking forward.
The demand is definitely.
And a lot of them are not in very good shape, and so we know down the road they're going to be needing more services.
Yep, yep.
You know,
We've
veterans from
seen
calmer
it
times.
increasing already. The library had requested additional funding for wages and hours and also technology upgrades. At this point, that was the best we could provide for in this draft of the operating budget. So there will be some additional expense funding, but not in the wage line item. And here's where we talk about, Joe, what you had mentioned. As the debt payments decrease, so does the revenue to support it. So it's not like we're gaining any operating budget capacity and can put that back in public safety or elsewhere. Retirement system modest increase. Unemployment is being reduced because we're not anticipating any additional layoffs for the first time in, 5 years, I think, 4 years. Group insurance, there's the 8% increase. You know, as far as moving forward, people like to talk about, okay, what are some ways of generating new revenues? Well, there really aren't a lot of ways of generating revenues or saving money. We try to look at it every year, but and address those items that we can. But really, on the expense side, regional cooperation is kind of all we've got left. We've done everything else. We've got solar initiatives to continue to consider. Obviously, that has to be evaluated on a case-by-case basis, but there is a potential to generate additional revenue through those proposals.
So I was just surprised that you only had solar as opposed to solar plus wind.
Well, I haven't heard any wind proposals in this budget cycle, Mike.
Yeah, I'm saying looking forward that I think, you know, again, changes with the subsidies and stuff, but if you've got good sites, wind, from an investment point of view, seems to be a better investment than solar. You know, that's why I'm thinking that.
I'm pretty much looking at a 1 year,
Right, yeah.
but yeah, absolutely. You know, that certainly has the potential to raise revenue as well. Board of Health has been working hard on trying to promote recycling, and we've seen the results of that. The partnership that we entered into has the potential this year for almost a $68,000 profit, if you will, from where we were last year. So that's good news. I mean, we've still got a few months to go before we determine whether or not it's all realized, but the potential is there. And so far, I've had relatively few complaints. I don't know, you probably fielded the majority of them, but it seems to be working well at this point in time. You know, we talked about public participation and getting information out. I don't know if we'd ever want to entertain any kind of meetings to get residents involved, to get public input. You know, we have our posted meetings and we generally don't get a significant attendance at them. But if you wanted to initiate any type of an annual meeting where you can get that kind of input, or just something to think about. We did form a committee to talk about voluntary pilots. I'm not sure what I'll have to get a status report from them. I'm not sure where they are, but that has the potential for additional revenues.
I just want to say, I was supposed to be the selectman's representative to that committee, and to my knowledge, it's never met.
It's never met?
Since I was appointed to it.
Okay. I believe Bud Kelly chairing that, I think. Can't remember.
Frank, do you remember who was going to chair the pilot committee?
Was it Bud Kelly?
The pilot committee?
Yeah.
Does that still exist?
I know Marshall Jesperson was on from the finance committee.
Yeah, I don't know who the
Bob,
chair was.
Bob is on?
Bob was on it?
Maybe it was Bob that was going to chair it.
Okay, I'll follow up with
He
them.
may have been a little distracted by other things.
Could be, could very well be. We've done a great job at saving money on our utility bills. Sam's been tenacious and very, very aggressive in pursuing everything that's been available to the town. User charges, we still, I still haven't given up post-community fees. I know I'm probably chasing windmills on that, but I still think we should continue to have that conversation. Basically, what you see the document, it tries to address what I interpreted your priorities to be and the priorities of the community. And it does add back some of the staffing and programs. Not all of them, but some of them. We have addressed the majority of our facility issues with the exception of the police station, so that's going to be probably the priority for this year. And the incorporation of the CPC funding program, I think, is really imperative to having a solid capital plan.
I just want to make a comment on the facility issues. And certainly, I think we all agree that doing something for the police is top priority. But we really don't have a proper senior center. This senior center idea has been, talked about for a number of years. And using essentially a surplus classroom over at Eagle Elementary School is not a very good solution. It's better than nothing. But, once we figure out how to deal with the police station, it seems to me that should start percolating.
That should be added on. Okay. Yep.
Maybe do them both together.
Maybe. A lot of public safety facilities have community centers. It's not out of the realm of possibility. I didn't know if you wanted to go through the special articles tonight, or if you want to, no? Okay, okay. We will have to, I guess I just ask you to take an opportunity during the week to review them. And if you have any questions individually, feel free to ask me or email me. You want to go through?
Tracy, good job.
Thanks. If there's anything on here that you want removed, that we don't even want for consideration for voting next week, we can take it off now. We start with a special town meeting. That number on Article 1 is to cover the snow and ice deficit.
I just trying to figure where I am in the notebook here.
The second page.
Second page.
Second.
Second page. I looked all of this stuff over.
It is. It's already about 102,000. I think it's already gone up. So that number will change, but whatever the final deficit is the number that will be appearing. And that would be a recommendation to fund from free cash.
What was the total, Tracy, so far?
It's a little over 110,000, the deficit. The next article, and all of the capital articles that are here have been gone through the capital planning committee's process. And Chairman Bob Connors will be making a presentation to the Board of Selectmen. But this is for 2 mowers that were proposed, and we are going to ask that that be funded from the sale of land account.
I just had one comment on that.
Sure.
These are pretty marginal capital expenses, right? We normally say 10 grand is sort of our limit, so we've got 2 items at 10 grand each.
Yep.
With a lifetime that's maybe 5 years or so.
It's
kind of at the edge of, and then I just.
It's right on the edge.
Yeah, and I'm just
Anything-
concerned that, we're selling off some of the family jewels, we're not going to get another chance.
Absolutely.
And with things like police stations out there, it just makes me a little nervous to start trying to see some of these things through, know, pay for the land sales, that's all.
Just so you know, right now, the land fund only has $23,000 in it at this point in time. You remember, we made commitments, but they haven't closed yet.
Right, yeah, I understand.
So that is a point well taken. But the way the criteria was established, it's anything over $10,000 and a useful life of more than 5 years. So that's, yeah, you're right, that one's squeaking in there.
No, I know, I mean, I know how this, sometimes people end up getting quoted about $500 higher than they could otherwise.
Yeah, no, I don't think, and we did get quotes, but before the purchase is made, we'll have to go out and get, 3 competitive
Right.
quotes, so that was just the preliminary one. Article 3, that's making repairs to the Grange Hall, and that has not, at this point in time, gotten the approval of the Capital Planning Committee. So they, you may see that article removed, and I understand that the Byfield Arts has just gotten their 501c3 status, so we're going to be changing the way we fund that as well, that whole operation.
They generate, that comes from the funds that they generate, right?
Not this one.
Not this one,
No.
but in the future, that's what the hopes are, that the funds they generate will pay for the operation. Article 4 is the Middle Road Weir project. I think you all had a presentation of that back about a year ago. We had hoped to put it on in the fall, but I think the sentiment of the Capital Planning Committee was it was a big enough issue that we wanted to see it appear at the annual town meeting. And then the $6,000, that is the exact amount that we got for the sale of the silver coins. And we made a commitment to the Historical Commission that we would put in we couldn't, there was no mechanism for us to allow them to spend that money because by law it has to be deposited into the general fund. This is how we allow them to use that for the historical purposes. We make an appropriation from free cash. The first article on the annual town meeting is, well, the first 3 articles are consistent with what we do each year, the operating budget that we've gone through. And then Article 4 is where we were going to implement our stabilization funding plan. That's the article that you'll see reduced by about $200,000 to accommodate the education funding change. Article 5, again, is just that acknowledgement of the OPEB liability that we talked about. Article 6 is where we move to make the purchase for the firefighter turnout gear. The Finance Committee has approved a reserve fund transfer to pay for 15 sets, Frank?
It's actually only about
12.
10 or 12 sets.
10 or 12 sets.
It was $10,000 to each fire
For
company.
each fire
That was
company.
because we didn't have much left in the reserve fund.
Right, right. So this would fund the balance. The Capital Planning Committee is talking about maybe phasing it in instead of doing it all at once, maybe phasing it in over a 2-year period. So that may be reduced from the $70,000 by the time it gets to you next week. The repairs to the elementary school, that's the money that we commissioned a study for both the library and the elementary school, the exterior envelope. And this is funding the first year of the repairs that are in that. I think I emailed that report to all of you so you could see everything that was going to be done in each of the years.
Is the district going to pick up the maintenance of the elementary school?
The district pays for the maintenance, yes. But the extraordinary repairs,
Yeah.
like what you're seeing here,
Yeah.
they don't pay. We're responsible. We're absent a lease document. That's something that we should probably talk about in the future. There's no formal designation for who pays for what, but in your typical landlord, relationship. We do own the building, it's our asset. I think it's our responsibility to maintain it. What we have now is a working group with Sam, Jocelyn, Christopher Walsh, Brian Forget, and myself meet periodically to review what's, those items that are identified as needing repair. We go through it, we prioritize based on the information that we get from the engineer. Then it goes to the capital planning committee, then it will come to you.
So what's preventing us from starting to work on a lease?
Nothing, I have a draft.
I mean, it just seems, with any landlord and tenant relationship, if things aren't written down, there can be significant disagreement, shall we say.
Absolutely.
Especially when large sums of money come into
Absolutely.
play.
Yep.
I feel much more comfortable if we knew what we're responsible for and what they're responsible for. Frank, could you?
Triple net.
Yeah, actually, that's an issue on the table for revision of the regional agreement, is to define more clearly what the district's responsible for and what the towns are responsible for. Because right now, it's a mixed metaphor. Because Salisbury doesn't own their elementary school, the district owns it. And there's some expenses, frankly, the district is paying that they don't pay for Newbury or for Raleigh. Like insurance, building insurance is paid for Salisbury out of the district budget. And even Salisbury agrees that needs to change.
I thought they charged them back for that, though.
Well, I thought so too, but the last meeting we had, it wasn't clear that they were actually doing that.
So, I mean, that was my next question, and Frank, David alluded, Frank. So, I mean, it would be nice to almost get an apples for apples use of income that's available to the towns to maintain their buildings.
It would be nice, but depending on the years of construction of the buildings, the
Right.
various stages of repair or disrepair that they happen to be in, you're never going to get your one for one. But I'd even say we should have the lease document outside of the regional
Because each
agreement.
town is going to be a different
Exactly,
situation.
exactly.
Right, and maybe that should be defined in the regional agreement if the town owns the building at some point.
Mhm. I do have a draft that we can, we're started kind of bantering back and forth about, but just wanted to make sure the board wanted to.
Tracy, hypothetically, okay, in a regional agreement,
Yep.
because I'm seeing this happening in other states. In the various towns, they'll close a school, and the kids, in other words, if they decide to close Pine Grove and Salisbury, will they come and have them all come here, or vice versa? Or they'll have them, in other words, say they close Newbury Elementary.
Mhm.
Would we, because they're not going to move the building out of there, what would happen to the building? Do they maintain control of it, or would the town?
No, if they close the building and they're not utilizing it for education purposes anymore, it reverts back
Because
to
I don't know
us.
if there's anything like that on the horizon, but I guess we've,
I haven't heard anything, but that would, that would be a decision that would ultimately rest with the school committee. Yeah,
well, you know what? It's hypothetical,
I know.
but we also have use for it.
What's that?
It'd make a tremendous town hall, police station complex.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything on the horizon, or I haven't heard it. at
I'm
this
telling you,
point,
it's
so.
happening around
Yeah,
us.
no, but that is the town's building, and if they decided to abandon it,
Yeah.
not to use it
And
as
it
a
is
school,
a
it would
good
be ours.
location, believe it or not.
Mhm. Yep.
Just food for thought.
Yeah.
I mean, Tracy, it seems to me, and not to belabor it though, that if there was some monies being used in the functioning of, let's say, Salisbury's elementary school, that there would be a way for us to incorporate a lease that made it so that, we receive some of the same things.
Oh, yeah, you want it to be
Yeah.
consistent as much as
Otherwise,
possible.
we're never going to capture that money.
Right, right.
And if it's been going on for quite a while, then we'll never recapture it.
Well, my understanding was that they get charged back for that. I will confirm that, but that's what I was told.
But the last communication meeting, it came up, and it wasn't clear.
Okay,
to the-
I'll follow up about that.
Yeah, and by the way, you should keep in mind that in that whole debt service issue, we're down to 11%. The school, actually, Newbury L, is paid off in 2015, I think.
Mhm.
And that should reduce, shouldn't it? Should reduce our debt service even more.
Mhm.
And in fact, one of the reasons that Salisbury's is lower than ours in terms of percent is because the district has a school for them. You know, so, the burden of the school can't be ignored. Now, we get a lot of the subsidy from the state through the school finance agency for paying off Newbury L, but still, it's on our nickel as debt service.
So Article 8 is our chapter distribution. We did get a letter that came through last week. I think it was a little over 400,000. Did you see that? Yeah.
That's double.
Yeah. So it was significantly more than we have been getting. Article 9 is, again, the result of the building envelope analysis here to the library. Those are the anticipated repairs in year 1. What I did was I tried to provide a little rationale underneath each one so you could get an idea of what the article represents. And then the Finance Committee will probably add to that a little bit, and we'll take the votes of both the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee and record them in the document for distribution. Article 10 is to insulate and sheetrock the DPW bay, the new bay that was built. I don't know if you remember, the bids came in so much higher than we had anticipated. DPW parking lot needs to be paved. That's $35,000 expenditure. $20,000 for plans. For design services for the renovation expansion of the DPW office and the design of a bathroom facility in that area. These two have not been approved by capital planning at this point in time. We're meeting Thursday morning at 7 o'clock, 7:15, and we'll be finalizing our report to the board. Article 13 is the scheduled replacement of a one-ton dump truck. That's on the CDC's plan. Article 14 is the Recreation Committee, the revolving fund. 15, the Harbor Master revolving fund. And Article 16 will be removed now that they have their not-for-profit status.
Okay, good. I just want to understand these. So the idea with the recreation revolving fund is this would enable them to take income from the fields and so forth, put it up there, and we're just saying that you're authorized to spend $60,000.
Assuming you bring in 60,000.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And they can only spend up to what has been received. So if in the first 6 months they've only brought in $10,000, that's all they can spend.
And then with respect to the Byfield Community Center, going forward, what would the relationship be? They would basically, we would just have a lease? And
We would execute a lease with them as well.
who would be responsible for what? under
Well,
lease?
that would all be in the lease document, where I just got word from Heidi on Saturday, actually, that they got their 501c3 status. So Ginny Creamer is working on a draft document proposal, and we're kind of working with her, telling her what we both expect. But the relationship has always been very good with the Community Ed Center, so.
I wouldn't say that.
With
Current
this-
leadership.
With this leadership, I should say, yes. With the current Community Ed Center.
Actually, something occurred to me, and it really goes back to the special town meeting, and that is that with these repairs to the elementary school and the library, we have a nice detailed study of what needs to be done. We don't have anything like that for the Grange Hall. And so I'm wondering when that,
Actually, funny you should ask, we just got quotes for it, and that is something that we we will be undertaking as of July 1st. We just don't have any money left in our professional and technical services account. So it'll be likely, under the $3,000 mark, but we plan to do it for all of our facilities. And we even had a conversation at the capital planning committee meeting about doing it for the town hall, but we're a little hesitant.
Yeah, it just makes me think that people might be a little nervous about that $70,000 figure when there's no backup. where
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Everything else.
Absolutely.
You've got these nice studies that sort of lay out what the issues are.
That's how the conversation started before we started putting money into it. They prefer to see the whole study done. And the rest of the articles, we don't have to go through those. I think you've been through them with the planning board. The majority of them are the, you've seen before, or you've had conversations about. Article 20 is removed. We took care of that at the fall town meeting. Article 21 and 22, we seem to have those appearing in our warrant every year, and I'm not sure we need to, so I did ask town council to review those, see if they could be eliminated, or if they do have a purpose that requires an annual approval. I'm just not familiar with them.
Tim might check with the cubic at Mass Highway too.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
it's
Yeah,
One
definitely.
one way or the other.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'll give them a call. 23 is just increasing the amount of the senior work-off program from $750 to $1,000. And the Board of Assessors has approved that policy change. There are some changes to the dog licensing fines. And then just all the zoning changes. There have been some discussions about people proposing articles by petition, but I haven't seen anything formally
What's the deadline for
being
that?
submitted. Well, you have to vote on the 23rd, so the deadline for submission of articles has already passed.
Oh, okay.
But they can come in by petition anytime up until you have to post it. So that would be the 23rd.
No, it's 14 days, unless you're going to post them individually.
Well, they have to vote to approve it, right? And you're,
And the special town meeting warrant has to be posted 14 days prior, so.
right, so the 23rd would be the last meeting to meet. Yeah.
Now, that gets presented not to the selectmen, but the town clerk, right?
Gets presented to the town clerk, she has to certify the signatures, and then it would automatically be put on.
Or was it something like, some very small number, right, for annual town meeting? Isn't it
It's less than 100. I know for the special,
Oh,
I thought it was
I thought it
curious,
was way
the
less than that
special
either.
town
Yeah.
meeting
I think you're right.
required more than the annual town meeting was like 25 or something.
Yeah. I
No,
think-
I
no,
thought.
25.
Quorum is 40 for anything.
No, for petition, to bring something by
petitions, yes.
petition.
25 sound right?
No,
No?
it's 10
I thought it
for
was 10.
annual
It's even
town
less.
meeting,
Okay.
and it's
thought it was
100
For a special,
either 100 or 200 for
Yeah.
a special town.
I thought that was curious.
I
that it was
covered it.
like
I
that.
think there might be two different things too, like if you want to call a special town meeting that's not already scheduled.
Scheduled.
There's something, I think that's separate from what you need.
To brush up on my Robert's rules.
Yeah, this happens very often, but
Thank
it has
goodness.
happened.
I think one of the significant changes in this budget, and maybe the last, is that we're definitely looking to try to take care of what we own.
Yeah.
And I
That's
think
good.
that's, and having a little extra money to do it is, so we appreciate it.
But also, I mean, making progress on public safety. I mean, we've hit so many parts of town government over the last several years, and starting to kind of at least get back to where we were is really very exciting after what we've been through.
Yeah, no, it is. It's, trends are good, the news is good. It's not, it's never where you want it to be, but I think we're definitely heading in the right direction.
It's a lot of work.
I'd rather be climbing uphill than sliding downhill.
Well, and that's really important too. We try to add back in a manner so that you're not going to have to take away next year. You want to do it very slowly and evaluate it very carefully before you increase any of these budgets.
Tracy, what the schedule, as you have it in here, is this is your first presentation of the budget to the Board of Selectmen, and next Tuesday they adopt the budget. What about the warrant? When will that be finalized?
I hope to have it before the board finalized. Our items will be finalized and presented to them on Tuesday.
Okay, so Finance Committee's next meeting isn't until May the 7th. Is that going to be too late for the Finance Committee to weigh in with its recommendations?
Well, the way I thought it worked here, and correct me if I'm wrong, I thought the selectmen adopted a budget and then the Finance Committee made recommendations on the selectmen's adopted budget. Is that not?
Well, I'm thinking of the warrant now. There are numerous articles of financial implications that the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen make a recommendations, yea or nay.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
All of the Finance Committees will be included in there. You wanted to take action on it before the board voted?
Well, I don't know what we should be doing. The next meeting is May the 7th. Is that too late for us to say yea or nay?
When should we
We're going to post both warrants.
What?
When your next meeting is, they have to be
May the
posted by
7th.
the 7th.
Yeah, they have to be posted by the 7th.
Which means they have to be assigned before that. They should really be in the constable's hands on the 6th, legally.
That might be worth calling like a special meeting.
Yeah,
Even
like we called a special meeting.
Yeah,
Certainly in the past, I mean, we've sort of had a little give and take
yeah. I
back
think
and
it's
forth.
important.
And we'd certainly I'd like to hear the Finance Committee's thoughts before we have to sort of seal the deal on the warrant, but it sounds like we're just running out of time, huh?
Do you want to have
Well, I mean, just
a joint meeting?
You mean next Tuesday? Or the following Tuesday? What would be a good date?
It would have to be next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday's a meeting, but the following Tuesday's an election.
No, that's the 30th, that's right, that's a good point.
I know, we got pushed back and we're still not even, we don't have final numbers with the state budget with all the,
Well, it sounds like we may not have final numbers until June.
I know.
Tracy, we can meet at 6 o'clock, although David has trouble making it with the Finance Committee. Tuesday, right?
Because we've got the solar thing, which is probably going to have.
Yeah, it's gonna be a-
Oh, that's right, you got the solar thing.
Yeah.
So I mean, we can meet at 6.
Let me see.
The assessors are meeting at,
I don't
Huh?
see,
the assessors meet at 6 in town hall, I know.
We could probably get
Yeah.
them to move somewhere, maybe.
oh,
No? Is there any room?
There's only 3 of them. They could go.
Yeah, they go into
Yeah.
into Doug's office or something.
Or their own office.
Assessors.
I don't see anything in this that's, way out of line. I mean, a lot of the things we've already discussed as a Finance Committee,
Yeah,
but that doesn't mean there won't be a vigorous discussion, just to make sure they understand.
Well, the big curveball this year is the governor
Yeah.
changing that. That's-
Well, I'm wondering if there shouldn't be some contingency numbers just in case. I mean, for Tracy's already got a strong number of, 390,000 above what we have now.
that's an estimate.
That's an estimate,
Yeah.
right?
It's just an estimate, that's
Yeah.
all that is.
I'm concerned because I really thought this year we were going to make the step and have a nice stabilization fund so that we could, it's a big disappointment to me.
I was ecstatic, but it shows you how naive I am about the
Right.
legislative process. I mean, basically what I think I heard you say is that the whole pace of the reset has been questioned by the legislature, that they don't want to do it that fast. And then the question is, do they want to do any at all, you know, to get us down to where we're supposed to be?
Tracy, any of these numbers that we went through in the special articles, if it hit 390, would you rethink them?
No, because the majority of those special
Right.
articles are being funded from available funds, not recurring
So I mean,
revenues.
that's something for the finance committee to think about too.
Yeah, well, I mean,
No.
Tracy's already kind of indicated that one vulnerable proposal is 250,000 to the stabilization fund. And we may not be able to afford 250,000 to the stabilization fund.
In the road program,
And the road program.
and the, you know, bringing the snow and ice. You know, there are some adjustments, they're not gonna impact, again, that's what I talk about when I say, you know, be cautious when you add things back, because you don't wanna add things back and then take them away. Those are items that we haven't funded in the past, so that would be the new programming.
I was just gonna say, I looked at my schedule, and I could be at 6 next week if we wanted to have a joint meeting.
So it's up to
Has
you
to be
now.
posted on the 7th, right?
You should poll your board. We
Special
could meet at
town
6.
warrant has to be posted by the 7th.
I'm sorry, but
The 6th?
We could meet at 6 next Tuesday, so you should poll your board to see if a meeting would be good.
next Tuesday is the 23rd.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you're proposing a joint meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, my only concern with that would be not a lot of room for finance committee discussion
Before
among
the-
itself. But maybe we could meet as a finance committee an hour ahead and then meet with the board of selection and meet the selectmen, at least to get any issues out.
What's the Tuesday? It's the 23rd,
23rd
and then
30th is
30th,
election.
and then
and then the 7th.
7th.
I can give that,
Be
I
too
can
late.
certainly give that a shot and see.
I mean, there's probably no real legal reason they couldn't meet on the 30th.
On the 30th,
Because we
yeah.
don't have elections at town hall anymore, so.
Kathy, do you know if,
Provided we don't have some sort of an event that we can't get there.
Yeah,
Never.
I know.
I think we learned, wow, the last day, hold your breath, you know?
Kathy, do you know by chance if other members of the committee have picked up these books yet?
Nobody has except.
Larry picked one up
Oh,
today.
Larry got
Larry
it
did?
today?
Yeah.
Maybe, I mean,
Oh, he's
if
the
we
one.
met on the 30th, that would give the finance committee some time to
Yeah,
deliberate amongst themselves first, and then, so it certainly would be.
would that work?
To meet on the 30th?
Yeah.
But you're gonna have to sign.
Well,
warrant.
the election will be in the fireball,
We've been through
right?
that.
So we could meet in
You had to do
town
some
hall.
typing.
Yeah,
Okay,
This
we'll
way,
plan on that.
sure. Okay.
Yeah.
That might be better because
Either
then
that or meet
they
again
can all
before the.
do two things at once.
Perfect.
They can vote and come to the meeting.
All right, what are we doing, so we know?
30th.
So that's a joint meeting you're talking about.
Sounds crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And that'll be enough time to, get.
That's the thing that makes it tough,
What?
because we've done this before. Have the meeting the last possible day. Okay, if there's any
No,
amendments.
no, you, oh, yeah.
If there's any amendments or changes,
Mm.
someone's got to run out, retype them. I'm telling you,
Kathy's smiling.
Sounds
Kathy's
crazy
had
to
to
me.
do it before.
Yeah, but you've got from the 30th, we don't have to have it posted until the 6th. You think that's too close?
I think we came down and it had to be posted that day when we did it
Yes,
before.
that was
Yeah.
the problem we had.
Seriously.
So we don't have it this time.
I think we have a constable sitting with us.
What do we
here.
what do we need to do today?